wolves and the golden key. I love this lecture. This is neat. This kind of continues from our last lecture. So we're going to do a quick recap. Last week, we explored the science of relationships. And, you know, I'm so excited about, how we saw those kids on the toolbox project. Can you imagine having all this information when you were a child and being able to incorporate all of this in your youth? So that by the time you're an adult, you already have all these skills developed. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing that it's surfacing now. This stuff is relatively new. It's in your lifetimes that is being discovered, including this 5-to-1 magic relationship ratio, which is all because of the structure of the brain, right? And that we have the limbic system in the middle and the red brain, green brain state, and that we want to cultivate a green brain state. So it makes total sense that we would need to cultivate that in our relationships too, and that we can do it with simple and easy things, small little. We've had a lot of micro positive moments here, sharing, exchanging, affirming. Those all count, and they build up, and they help in our relationships offset the vulnerability that we have to the negativity bias there, to over focus on the things that happen. And we learned about the 4 horsemen and antidotes to them, things that we can start to practice, shifting from complaining to, from criticism to complaining, replacing defensiveness with taking a break or allowing in the other person's point of view, I'm opening, rather than we get walled off or armored up. Get rid of contempt. Like if you feel, we'll talk a little bit about resentment down the road and healing that. But if you feel contempt, it's because you've got some resentment or anger, and it would really help you to not carry that along, right? You can sustain the knowledge that that person is dangerous, that you want to keep a distance from, or that you were harmed from that experience. And you can sustain the lessons learned while letting go of the trauma. So reach out for help in whatever way. And if you want ideas on what kind of help would work for you, then reach out to me and we can brainstorm that. But you don't need to be dealing with contempt. That needs to go. Goodbye. And stonewalling, when we shut down or the other person shuts down, it means that we need to take a break. And you guys know very well the red brain, green brain orientation, that we don't want to live in a stressed out state, because it removes all the higher order thinking part of our brain. We no longer can think with any kind of sophistication when that's going on. So we want to get into a green brain state. And then we talked about the 7 ways that we can nourish our relationships. And these are things that we want to fold in and become part of our routine. Cultivating the friendship by expressing interest in people that we care about, in their goals, hopes, and dreams, right? Show fondness and admiration frequently. Express your appreciation, express your admiration. This should be done. Like if you want something, if you want something to change, you should lead with 5 expressions of admiration before you request a change or appreciation, right? Over a period of time, not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the ask, but basically spreading it out over a period of time and then asking for the change, so that you prepare things properly. It's like you stretch before you exercise, so your body's warmed up and ready to deal with this, right? You don't want to ask somebody for something when they're stressed out. Turn toward bids for connection, just being mindful of this, allowing ourselves to be influenced, letting in, letting go of the feeling that we sort of get trained with in our culture, that we need to know everything, that we should have everything figured out. Wrong. Child's mind is the healthy mind, open to the new, open to discovery, open to creativity. And along with that, play, which fosters trust. Play fosters trust. So finding simple, easy ways to play, having points of connection, tuning into those, the things that you have in common, and cultivating those, flourishing them, moments of enjoying. And the beautiful thing on truly listening, I listen with my eyes, I listen with my ears, and I listen with my heart. So really beautiful lessons there. And that these cultivate green in our relationship and put emotional money in the bank that helps us when we need to deal with conflict, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, is is working through the other part of relationships, which is the fact that we do have conflict and it's a natural part, right? So we want to get comfortable with it, not uncomfortable with conflict. Are you conflict avoidant or conflict comfortable? So how many of you are conflict avoidant? You don't like conflict. You feel uncomfortable with it. And how many of you are comfortable with conflict, right? So we have a reason why we have people who are conflict avoidant, and we have a reason that we have people who are conflict comfortable. Totally hear you about hating conflict. I do too. I'm one of those conflict avoidant persons. Now, this is actually wired in, which is really interesting. Wired in. So people who are highly agreeable are conflict avoidant, and people who are less oriented toward being highly agreeable or nurturing oriented are conflict comfortable. Now, if you think about a tribe, you need a bunch of people who are wired up to focus in on the kids and nurture and take care of them, right? And they want to keep all conflict away from the children. And then you have another group, because nature's rough, you have another group that can deal with the harshness of nature, that will go out and confront that. And they can't be wired quite as tender if they're going to run out and confront that, right? If they're going to go out and deal with the bear or the mountain lion attacking or the other tribe, right? They've got to be oriented a little bit differently so they will go approach that conflict. So we're pre-wired in a sense to be conflict avoidant or conflict comfortable. Now, both sides of these has the yin yang has the downside. Of the conflict avoidant, the downside is that you probably sometimes need to say something that you're afraid to say, or when a conflict happens, we're clumsy about it. And conflict comfortable people, like my husband is totally conflict comfortable, can be a little bit more too assertive, right? Especially with a conflict avoidant person. So we're going to look at some videos on mastering this, right? How do we help to find that nice harmony between these so that those of us who are conflict avoidant can move toward conflict with a little less fear and a little bit more openness. It can become more comfortable. We can stretch our boundaries of comfort with that. And those of us who are conflict comfortable can be tuned in to empathy and making sure that it is the right approach for the effect that we want for the outcome, right? Jung called this duality that we live in that makes conflict inevitable. So it's part of the Tao. So we can let go of being unhappy with it. We can understand our neural wiring of being conflict avoidant, and we can gently work with it. We can, like we would with a shy child, gently encourage the child to get stronger and stronger about dealing with unfamiliar situations that they feel shy about. So the dialectic is a good term for you to know. It's an intellectual term, and what it refers to, it's a great term to use, the dialectic. And what it means is that two different ideas that crash against each other, they go back and forth, like two debaters who debate something back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until you come up with a third idea. And a really good one, here's a dialectic. The kings and rulers of the past and the peasantry had a dialectic. And then out of that came democracy. So that's an example of a social dialectic, right? So the idea is that there's a third way when we look in the right way at disparate points of view. Now, one of the things we were looking at Gottman's research, and one of the things that Gottman's research found is that with people who deal with conflict, it's not so much the conflict, but rather how it's handled. And there's some interesting dynamics that are challenging for us. And it's just these two things and that can happen in conflict. And the reason is because our amygdala hijack brain takes over when we're in conflict. And so we're going to be learning some tools to how to stay in this prefrontal lobe center of mindfulness in conflict instead of trapped by the amygdala hijack, right? Which puts us into a very defensive and even aggressive posture, which just makes the conflict way worse, right? So we end up being very clumsy about dealing with the conflict because we're amygdala hijacked. And so one of the things that soothes the amygdala hijack is training ourselves to become a little bit more relaxed and comfortable with conflict and that it exists, and I can become more skillful at it, and it doesn't have to be a terrifying or frightening thing for me. the two things are that they stay respectful and they really care. They stay really caring about understanding the other person's point of view. And one of the things that's interesting in conflict is that when we get pissed, we stop caring about the other person's point of view. And that's largely because we're hijacked, right? We're in here. So in here, it completely run by me, the default mode network. So there's the, but I'm right and you're wrong. And yeah, you may be, but blame makes conflict. It's like gasoline on the fire of conflict. And it can be, I get it that it's hard to shift from blame to empathy, but this is, of course, the royal road to freedom. So let's look at a fun video by Brene Brown. If you don't know about her, she's amazing. She's adorable. And we're going to watch this video clip where she talks about Blamers Anonymous. Brene Brown is very funny, and she has one of the most popular talks on TED and TED Talks I've ever done. I highly recommend it. We'll look at some more excerpts of her work during the second half of our time together. But here, let's check out her talk about, this is about Blamers Anonymous, being a blamer, because we're all blamers, right? Until we know how not to be.
How many of you are blamers? How many of you, when something goes wrong, the first thing you want to know is whose fault it is? Hi, my name is Brene. I'm a blamer. Let me just tell you this quick story. So this is a couple of years ago when I first realized the magnitude to which I blame. I'm in my house. I'm on white slacks and a pink sweater set, and I'm drinking a cup of coffee in my kitchen. It's a full cup of coffee. I drop it on the tile floor. It goes into a million pieces, splashes up all over me. And the first, a millisecond after it hit the floor, right out of my mouth is this: damn you, Steve. Who's my husband? Because let me tell you how fast this works for me. So Steve plays water polo with a group of friends. And the night before, he went to go play water polo. And I said, hey, make sure you come back at 10, because I can never fall asleep until you're home. And he got back like at 10:30. And so I went to bed a little bit later than I thought. Ergo, my second cup of coffee that I probably would not be having had he come home when we discussed. Therefore, and so the rest of the story is I'm cleaning up the kitchen. Steve calls, caller ID. I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, what's going on, babe? What's going on? So I'll tell you exactly what's going on. I'm cleaning up the coffee that spilled all like dial tone. Because he knows. How many of you go to that place when something bad happens, the first thing you want to know is whose fault is it? I'd rather it be my fault than no one's fault. Because why? Why? Because it gives us some semblance of control. But here, if you enjoy blaming, this is where you should stick your fingers in your ear and do the no thing, because I'm getting ready to ruin it for you. Because here's what we know from the research. Blame is simply the discharging of discomfort and pain. It has an inverse relationship with accountability. Accountability, by definition, is a vulnerable process. It means me calling you and saying, hey, my feelings were really hurt about this, and talking. It's not blaming. Blaming is simply a way that we discharge anger. People who blame a lot seldom have the tenacity and grit to actually hold people accountable, because we spend all of our energy raging for 15 seconds and figuring out whose fault something is. And blaming is very corrosive in relationships, and it's one of the reasons we miss our opportunities for empathy. Because when something happens and we're hearing a story, we're not really listening. We're in the place where I was, making the connections as quickly as we can about whose fault something was.
Ta-da! That's Brene Brown. She is awesome. That was cute, huh? And she's so funny and so sweet. And here she is taking responsibility. She's saying that blaming is inversely related to accountability. So that means that when we blame somebody else, we're not taking responsibility for our effort at all. All right, why are we so quick to blame? Just yesterday, I had this thought, and this is a default mode network thought. And I've learned not to listen to my default mode network and not to fuel it, that it's unfairly biased, inaccurately biased. It's like your own personal defense attorney that is going to make excuses for you right and left, and so and go on a rampage, a rant. That if you analyze that rant by your actual reflective, your higher thinking network, you would be like, no. So um, I was in a hurry. I had a lot of pressure. I had to deal with a lot of stuff a couple of days ago, and I think I was getting ready to go. And my hands are sopping wet, and I reach for a paper towel, and the roll's empty. And I immediately do the same thing as Brene Brown. I immediately am thinking, why do I always have to be the one who replaces the paper towels? Now, the funny thing is that my default mode network will immediately start to say, yeah, I'm the one who usually replaces, that's not fair. You do almost all the work around here, yada, yada, and it goes on a rampage. So, which isn't really totally accurate. It isn't accurate when you really take a step back and you reflect on it with, say, the kind of intellectual mind that you apply to school, right? Am I really the one who does almost all the chores around here? Especially when you consider the larger view of chores, like taking care of the cars, taking care of the exterior stuff, taking care of the camper, taking care of the bills. So one of the things that we want to be aware of, we've talked a little bit about the default mode network, which is that autopilot rambling mind. Well, it's completely self-absorbed and self-obsessed, the default mode network. As far as the default mode network is concerned, the only person around is you. And it's all about you, and it's a worry wart. It's a scaredy cat, right? So it's always worried about if everything's okay and do people like me enough and yada yada yada. And the reality is if we cultivate a lot of love inside us and we express that in lots of ways, then we're going to have so many people around us we don't know what to do with if that's what we want. So that's a reality because there's tons of people out there that need love. So, and a sense of goodwill and friendship, right? So we can be proactive about that. You don't want to believe what your default mode network says without reflecting on it with, you can call it your executive control network. That's one of the terms they use for it. It's when you're having thoughts on purpose, when you're deciding to be reflective, when you're thinking something through. And of course, we're always thinking something through with the available knowledge we have, right? And one of the false assumptions of the default mode network is that it knows enough to draw accurate conclusions on a regular basis, but it doesn't. It's always making conclusions on the past. Your salience network is the one that's sort of scanning the background and kicks in. So when you're meditating and you're training concentration and focusing on one thing, like the breath, which is a concentration training exercise in meditation, we inadvertently do a concentration training when we focus on things like relaxing tension in our body and relaxing the dorsal vagal that lies in front of your spine, not behind it, but in front of it. When we put our attention there and we relax that, we're training our attention to focus on those particular things. But we're also relaxing the body. Another kind of meditative practice is training attention to focus on one thing, like focusing on a mantra, like om, 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 or focusing on your breath. Usually you pick a place where you're feeling the breath and you keep your attention there, like you might notice it in your belly or in your nose. So you're focusing on one thing. You keep your attention there for an extended period of time, a minute, 2 minutes. Your mind wanders into the default mode network because it's used to that. So that exercise of bringing it back is an executive control exercise that increases your ability to manage what network you're in. So we're going to be doing more of those exercises in the second half, where we return. This is a more boringer aspect of meditation, or we could say a little bit more tedious. So we'll do it in smaller increments, but the benefits are vast. It's like doing the plank. Benefits are strong. The salience network is the part of you that kicks in and goes, didn't you want to be meditating right now? When you lose your attention because it's scanning. The salience network is the one that kicks in and says, didn't you have an appointment at 11 o'clock, right? Things like that, right? So we're so enmeshed with the default mode network that we need to expand our ability to be familiar with these other thinking networks that we have access to, and our ability to manage which one we're in. Another slide on the 3 networks of thinking. I basically just described these to you out loud. I mentioned that the default mode network is always focusing on me. So I'm the center of the universe for the default mode network. Whereas your central executive network can more easily expand into empathy, right? And understand somebody else's feelings, somebody else's point of view, see things from their angle, right? And your salience network is a scanner. All right, what if you are the only one who changes the paper towels? And we'll go into this one a little bit more in a future talk, but for the short version, ask for what you want respectfully. One of the things that we can get used to doing and that is really helpful is being willing to ask for what we want, rather than be passive aggressive, which is finding ways to manipulate for what you want without having to feel the vulnerability. Brene Brown is an expert on vulnerability. So this is about not having to feel the vulnerability of asking, and because someone could say no, so it's a little bit vulnerable. And also, the other thing that we do in passive aggressive tendency that we have, and we do this because we don't know better and we're trying to get needs met, but when we learn better ways of doing things, it's very helpful. So the other thing that we do is we sort of get pissy about something, right? So rather than do that, you have to ask yourself, what is it I really want here? And what's a kind and respectful way that I can ask for it? You know, how would you feel about da 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 if I did da 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 da? Or, you know, like yesterday, I wanted to get my partner was starting to slack on helping to take care of our doggy. And so I said to him, you know, the first thoughts that came into my default mode network, my, let's say, manic defense attorney, is this is bullshit. Shouldn't have to be the one. But I've learned not to listen to that. It's a cue. It tells me that there's something that might be bugging me that deserves my reflective attention of my higher order thinking mind, right? So I ask myself how I really feel about it and what I want. What do I want? What do I want? I need to be able to answer what I want. Well, I want, and then it's nice if you can be specific in the ask. Like, do you think you could take Augie on a walk once a day? You know, could you take one of the walks, right? And picking a good time to make the ask. So you're not asking someone when they're feeling frustrated because their phone's not working, right? You pick a good time. So this is all gaining a lot of self-composure and self-control. This is that emotional intelligence that we talked about. Now we're going to watch a delightful video on a path to empathy, the heart of difficult conversations. So I'm going to throw it on up for you here. And this is with Michelle Stowe, and it's really wonderful. And it walks us through how we can shift out of sort of being a brat to being kind, right? Or feeling like we're in a blaming state to being kind. Oops, that's not it. Not this one. This one. Okay, I'm going to start a little bit in because we're running a little bit short on time. Oh, no.
I thought to myself, well, which
this
would
isn't
my
it. What happened? Here it is. I jumped ahead to the next video for some reason. Okay.
Years, and I'm still a teacher at heart. Only now I teach people about restorative practice. And restorative practice offers language, skills, tools to consciously build positive relationships and to manage conflict when it occurs in a healthy way. And I'm going to share one of those tips with you tonight. I have done a lot of research in this area, helping teachers to implement restorative practice in their most challenging classes. or with their most challenging students. And the positive outcomes have really inspired my passion and commitment for the work that I now do. I really believe in it as a teacher, as a human being in the world. I feel it has so much to offer us all. And at the heart of the restorative approach are the values, the restorative values, such as empathy and respect. And I will share time with you where I'm really rocking those values in my classroom. But first, I'm going to tell you a story about a time where I've armored up and disconnected. And this example is classroom based, but any of you in the audience that has a teenager in your life might be able to relate to this scenario. It's a Thursday afternoon and I'm tired, a little bit overwhelmed. And one of my lovely students, Lauren, comes in with her homework done. And I jump straight to the attack, giving out. And she raises her eyes to heaven. And I say, "Did you just raise your eyes to heaven?" And she says, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, we'll see about that after school at 3:30. And she said, "No, we won't, because I won't be there." And I said, "Oh, yes, you will. And if you're not there, you'll be in big trouble." And I didn't quite know what the trouble was going to be, but I knew I was going to put a lot of effort and energy into finding it, And at the time, I'm the poster girl in my school for restorative practice. And I could hear this voice in my head saying, "What are you doing?" And I can't help it, I'm just on one and it escalates. The whole class is like that. I go home with a headache.
So she's amygdala hijacked in that moment, right? This part of her brain is taken over. And one of the things that mindfulness helps us do is to catch ourselves in that moment so that we can notice, so that we become more aware when that is starting to rise, so that we can get ourselves to take a break and get our whole brain back before we carry on. But since we make a lot of mistakes anyway, one of the best things about human relationships is repair, what she's calling restorative practice, repairing a relationship, restoring a relationship with a repair. And one of the things that Gottman found is that our relationships are built on repairs because we humans make mistakes all the time. We're not perfect. So, and we don't want to try to expect ourselves to be. We just want to inch our way toward being a little bit better as we can. So toward the person we want to be. So she got amygdala hijacked, and she still has part of her prefrontal lobes intact, surveying, going, "Hey, is that how you really want to be?" But she was too caught up because this is a very strong and powerful force. So it takes some time to get a grip on this and to be able to catch it early enough to know how to go in and self-soothe so that we can take care of it. That's why self-soothing, this is a hint, being able to take care of your interior world is the golden key. You can see it right here. But since she wasn't able to do that in the moment, this was a small skirmish, she reached out for a repair. So these are the reparative practices.
And in that power struggle with Lauren, I've disconnected from my values. I am not trying to connect with Lauren and cultivate empathy. I'm not modeling respect, which isn't something you hustle for, whether you have your homework done or not. It's just a given, because we are. I wasn't promoting accountability, giving Lauren power to be part of the solution. I was just trying to punish her and make her do what I say because I say so. Where are my values there? As a teacher, I've always felt that what we know matters, but who we are matters more. And I didn't like who I was that day. I wasn't being my best self. Although I was probably doing the best I could in that moment, because calm is a superpower. Brené Brown, an empathy researcher, and my very favorite TED Talker of all time, by the way, maybe until tonight. But she says that calm is a practice. That it's not like we're born, you're a calm person or you're not. Calm people practice two things before they respond. Do you know what they do? They breathe and they ask questions. So the next day, Lauren comes in like this and she sits down, she's looking at me. And if I'm being totally honest, part of me is like, "Oh, it's on." And then I breathe. And I ask myself a very powerful question. And this question has been a great friend to me over the years. It's, who do I want to be in this situation? And of course, I want to be someone that models and lives my values. What's brilliant about restorative practice is that it offers a scaffold, an explicit language to breathe life into the values. So they're values in action, especially helpful in times of challenge when we can easily armor up, disconnect, and miss our opportunity for empathy. So I invite Lauren to connect with me by asking and modeling these very 6 simple questions. And I say, "Look, Lauren, I just want to discuss what happened yesterday with the homework, okay?" And she says, "Yeah." And I said, at the time, I wasn't thinking, and I went straight to the attack. And since then, I'm thinking I really could have handled that better. I'm sorry for how I spoke to you. And she said to me straight away, Mr. Grant, I was pure cheeky. And I said, look, from your perspective, what happened? And she said, well, I came in, I didn't have my homework done, you went mad at me. And she said, I was a bit cheeky. And I said, okay. I said, look, what were you thinking at the time? And she said, I was thinking, had I done something on you? Or you didn't like me or something? I've never seen you go on like that before. I said, no. My mom was sick at the time. I said, Lauren, my mom's not well and I'm tired and I think I just probably took it out on you, you know? I said, what are you thinking now? My third question. And she said, you were just having a bad day. I said, I was just having a bad day. I said, look, fourth question, who was affected by that? I said, I know I was very stressed. I said, I took it to the next class and I was guilty, felt guilty when I went home. I said, how about you? And she said, yeah, I was upset. She said, I was a bit embarrassed. And she said, I was kind of worried about coming here today. I said, I'm sorry, I know. And she said, no, I'm sorry too. And I said, okay, well, look, what could we have done differently? Fifth question. And she said, I said, look, from my perspective, I think I could have calmly said, can I speak to you at the end? I said, how are you? And she said, I could have told you at the start I didn't have my homework done. And I said, yeah. Or like, you could have done the homework, you know? And she's like, oh, yeah. But we had a chat about what happened that the homework wasn't done. And our sixth question, what needs to happen next? And honestly, Lauren and I got on better since that day than ever. It was an opportunity to practice empathy. There's a huge empathy deficit in our culture. And empathy is something that we can teach. It can grow, but you need to cultivate it. And the restorative questions facilitate that. They do two things. They invite us to see each other's perspective, a key ingredient of empathy. And they allow us to feel with one another, which is what empathy is, to feel with others. I now work in schools, in organizations with teachers and students who wish to cultivate a restorative culture. But this is relevant in the classroom, in the boardroom, in the living room, wherever there's people and relationships. So I'd invite you the next time you find yourself maybe in a challenging situation or in a difficult conversation to practice calmness, to pause, ask yourself, who do I want to be in this situation? And maybe instead of saying, why is the dishwasher still full? Ask what happened that the dishwasher's full. Or why are you late? What happened that you're late?
Notice that, I'm sorry I did that. I didn't mean to do that. I just wanted to pause it. Notice that it's about over. But anyway, notice that when we say, instead of saying, why didn't you clean the dishwasher out, is accusatory. But what happened that you didn't clean the dishwasher out is expressing some care for the person themselves, right? So it leads, so that whole phrase of what happened that shifts from why didn't this happen? Anytime somebody is accused of why, they feel cornered. So what happened that is wonderful phraseology. What she's talking about with restorative is what Gottman talks about with repair, that relationships that are strong use repairs and people are responsive to the repairs. So when somebody reaches out with a repair, people are responsive. That doesn't mean you should always be responsive for repairs that are awful. You may not be ready to repair a major breach in a relationship, such as a betrayal or abusiveness. And in those kinds of situations, it's good to get a coach or help through it. But repairs are wonderful, and it's really nice to allow ourselves to allow it soak in that it's okay for us to not be perfect and that repairs are part of the deal, that we'll be making repairs and it's okay to make repairs. I love how my bad became sort of a slang term in modern culture because it gives us that feeling that repairs, that it's okay to not be perfect. I think that's one of the messages behind my bad. So here's another thing that's super important. Who do I want to be in this situation? And we want to decide who we want to be, as how we want other people to experience us, and who we want to be, so that we have a touchstone to go to when we're amygdala hijacked in conflict, and we can remind ourselves who we want to be. And it's helpful to have 3 key words. You notice she mentioned Brene Brown, who was the voice in the animation we saw earlier, uses that there are 2 things that people do, and one of them is that they're calm, to be calm. One of them is that they breathe. That was breathe, and breathing in your belly anchors you down and gives you a sense of centered groundedness, so you don't feel so top heavy and uncertain. And so one of the words for me in my touchstone is calm. Another one is curious, interested. I want to stay curious, leave the essential narcissism of the default mode network, which is all about me, and be willing to look at things with a kind of playful curiosity and caring. So my three words are the three C's of calm, curious, and caring. What are your three words that you want to, how do you want to be when there's skirmishes or when things, so when there's no paper towels, this is BS. What do you want to switch to when you return? This is decided by your higher order mind, right? By the person. You got all these sub aspects of the mind that can take over, but we want to be anchored on the higher order. Now, there's a great phrase about assuming you don't know the other person's perspective that pulls us out of the narcissism of the default mode network, that my way of perceiving things should be everybody's way of perceiving things. And so you can see here this cute little comic, because this will flip from 4 to 3 to back to 3 to back to 4. And it's a perceptual illusion. And so we do have different perceptual views of the world, right? We have different lenses that we see the world through. Both biologically as well as culturally, in terms of what we learned, our experiences, and so on. We have different hot buttons is one way of seeing that, different preferences. So this kind of zooms back and absorbs the positive aspects of child mind, of being open and curious and stepping out of the false assumption of adulthood that we should know everything by now and things should be figured out. And then here are her 6 questions. And I want to just emphasize the idea so that you can reference things. And the what happened that is a great one to just remember, right? But these for a deeper conversation, you can see how she seamlessly wove those questions in and sort of adapted them so they sounded natural, right? But the what happened that, what happened that you came home so late, honey, is so different than why are you late, right? It's just totally different. It reflects this thing called I thou rather than I it. This was identified by Martin Buber, who's a sociologist, who noticed that when we're I and thou is a respectful approach, but sometimes we turn the person into an it, where there is no care, right? So the I thou returns the care, right? And she gives us this wonderful phrase to remove the accusatory tonality, the blaming and accusatory tonality of why didn't you, or why did you? What happened that you chose to do this? Or this is how things went. What happened with that? So much more respectful. So I had a personal experience of this. I had a student in class who, in face-to-face classes, in this class too, one of the things that we would do is a science fair project, and each person would create a project, and then students would walk around in small groups and visit the station, and they would talk about their project. So it meant talking about their project a couple of times to different groups of students, and it was a really fun way for us to all get familiar with each other and learn some different projects. But one semester I had a student, she was sitting like this. She said, I'm not going to do that, loudly, toward the end of class, right? So everybody could hear, with a little bit of obstinance, right? So we pick up the energy and then we react to it. So our default mode network is like, she's not being respectful, she's being aggressive. And so it gets a little up in arms because the limbic system senses that, and then our interpretive mind turns it into that. But I had just learned about restorative practices, connecting through conflict. So I vowed to stay open and curious. I was able in that moment to override the impulse and to shift. And so when class was over, I reached out and I said, I just wanted to chat with you. And I expressed my care and curiosity. No students ever objected to this project before. They tend to like it. I'm just curious about, it seemed to feel really strong for you, why that you don't want to do it. So I was curious about what's happening that you don't want to do that. And she actually told me this, and it blew my mind. She says, my mom's had Alzheimer's for 7 years. I take care of her. I'm a full-time caretaker. I repeat myself constantly. This project entails repeating yourself. I just can't deal with it. So the aspect of repeating yourself of the project had become a trigger of trauma for her, actually, because it's a bit traumatizing. She's weary, she's tired, she's exhausted and overwhelmed with having to do it. And boy, wow, huh? I mean, doesn't that take the energy out of it? So we'll be surprised what we can learn if we can stay open. So now we're going to do the final part of the lecture, which is mindfulness and the two wolves. And I know we're running a little over, so I thank you for sticking around. And this is a story about the relationship within. This is by the great Sharon Salzberg, who is one of the great compassionate mindfulness teachers. And so we'll watch this brief little animation here about the two wolves. This is only like 2 minutes long. Oh no, now we're at a talk at Google. Here's the animation. Keep flipping forward.
There's a story, usually attributed to the Native American tradition, which illuminates different ways of paying attention. An elder, talking to a child, says, "I have two wolves fighting in my heart. One wolf is fearful, vengeful, envious, resentful, and deceitful. The other wolf is compassionate, loving, generous, truthful, and peaceful." The child asks, "Which wolf will win the fight?" The elder responds, "The one I feed." That doesn't mean we try to deny or hurt or kill the angry wolf. If we did that, we'd end up in a long battle, all the while somehow making that wolf more powerful through our hostility and fear. Hating that wolf sucks the strength right out of us. Instead, we calmly pay attention to the angry wolf and let go of believing they have the answers. If we can do that, they end up lying down next to us, no longer an enemy. We help strengthen the kind and loving wolf, giving it nourishment and support so that we can follow it. That peaceful wolf can become our steady companion and show us the way through all kinds of different life experiences. Restful or chaotic, enjoyable or disappointing experiences may come and go, but we can have a guide with us through it all. This is what mindfulness can help you do. Mindfulness allows us to see our thoughts and feelings as they are beginning. It's very powerful to know what we're feeling as we're feeling it, know what we're thinking as we're thinking it. With mindfulness, we can choose what will strengthen and bring into action, and we can choose what we will gently let go of. We don't have to be at the mercy of old habits or old ways of thinking or old ways of being. We are empowered. It just takes practice.
Okay, sweet little video and story of the two wolves that are in our heart. We'll just run through that quickly. Now, she starts off by saying that this is a story about different ways of paying attention, different ways of being with our internal states, right? So this wolf active when my default mode network starts to complain about why am I the only one who does the paper towels? This is bullshit, yada, yada. And then switching to this wolf. Is that really true? Right? So this is just a quick summary of some of the terms that we could associate with each of these wolves, but obviously we could do different ones. And this is a segue slide that sometimes some people have sort of been overtaken by, say, their wolf of hate, and they end up in these kinds of behavior patterns. These are really unhealthy and even harmful behavior patterns. So I just want to say, if you have somebody in your life who is caught up in these patterns, if they behave this way from this kind of behavior most of the time, then that's really a difficult person to be with. And while we don't examine difficult people in here, it's really wise to seek help. You need an extra set of tools beyond what we explore to be able to manage really difficult people in your life. So I just want to say that as a little caveat so that we're aware of it. So she says we do not deny, hurt, or kill the angry wolf within. So we don't want to go to battle at war with, say, the negative voices in our head that speak to us harshly but instead we're loving, we bring the wolf of love to those voices. We're kind and loving to those voices so that they can calm down and shrink. So we want to tune in and take care of our inner world. Tune in and take care. Treat ourselves like we're really someone who we matter, that we want to take care of, because what's in here is going to reverberate out there anyway. So what's in here is going to reverberate out there anyway. So it's almost like the oxygen mask in an airplane. You got to put it on yourself first so that you don't asphyxiate and die before you can get it on your kid. You need to take care of yourself. Internal world. That's what this whole thing is about. So because what's in here is going to reverberate outwards anyway. And we're not going to be able to kill that wolf. We'll be able to calm it, soothe it, and tame it. Let go believing they have the answers is realizing that when we're beating ourselves up, we're caught in a loop, in a tape loop of that we've absorbed from somewhere in society, and that we can help soothe that tape loop with the wolf of love, with positive and affirming phrases, positive and affirming meditations, surrounding ourselves with positive and affirming people. A great place for positive and affirming people is support groups. Support groups. Those people go to support groups specifically to be supportive and to receive support. So to increase the support experiences in your life, reach out for support groups. There's lots of them everywhere on Zoom on almost every topic there is. And if you want to search for ideas for support groups, reach out to me if you're not sure how to proceed. Right? So we want to shift that internal phraseology, and you really can transform that internal critic into an internal ally, feeding the wolf of love, not beating up the wolf that is yelling, but looking at it with loving kindness. That's rough, that we've absorbed all these harsh phrases. That's hard. Other people experience this harshness inside of themselves too. That's actually a meta loving kindness exercise that is the meditation for this week. The assignment is, we won't have time for it, but I'll record it and put it up. And then there's lots of other options on the M&M this week. But it's basically realizing that other people feel this suffering like I do. And I wish to relieve the suffering for them. And I wish the suffering relieves for me, right? Because it all reverberates outward and carries on in a ripple effect, right? So that peaceful wolf can become our steady companion. So we want to develop like an internal best friendship with ourselves. We want to be our own best friend. We want to come through for ourselves, be there for us. We are the first best friend, the most intimate person that will carry with us through life is our self, right? That you heard in Mindful Schools. So in the Room to Breathe film, right? The river of life's filled with up and downs. And even the three phrases that we come up with, they can also be our steady companions. I want to be calm, curious, and caring as I move through conflict, as I move through life. Like touchstones like that can help be your steady companion as you move through. And she's saying this is what mindfulness helps us do. Being able to see our thoughts and feelings as they are beginning so that we can catch them. And if I notice I start to get upset when I'm talking to my husband, the reason why I used to lose my temper because I didn't catch it in time, and we would have some big argument. Now I can catch myself feeling upset. And what I do is I shift my energy to tuning into calming me down. I start breathing in through my belly. I put most of my energy into here instead of there. And then I might say to him, I'm starting to feel upset, something very real and descriptive about the moment. I'm starting to feel upset. I think I need to take a break. And then when you take a break, you have to do something that gets you into a green brain state, not listen to the default mode network, do the defense attorney case against them and for you, because that just perpetuates the anxious state, right? And then this gives us the ability to choose how to respond rather than losing it. And it took me several years of mindfulness practice to get on top of a temper I thought I could never get on top of. I worked on it in therapy and everywhere. And it was basically stored up anger that I would lash out at my husband for not standing up for myself enough. And so I learned to speak, stretch my ability to speak and express my needs. And lo and behold, he actually cares about my needs being met as long as I'm not an asshole about it, which is like, wow. This stuff comes from old. And then becoming aware, starting to care. We have to deeply care about how we feel inside. So that becomes more important to us than feeling upset. Feeling good needs to become more important to us than the powerful energy of feeling upset, so we can self-transform. So this is what I've been saying to you, that our internal state affects our perceptions and how we communicate. It skews our perceptions. When we're pissed, we can notice everything that's negative, and we don't see creative ideas about how to expand and reach our dreams, right? So rule number one, and this is the golden key, is to take care of your internal state. Right? Mindfulness strengthens our ability to be aware of what's going on within ourselves in the moment, to take care, because we're starting to become aware of this internal universe. And now we can pick up that, wow, I'm feeling that tightness in my chest. I'm feeling my stomach clench. I'm feeling a lot of energy in my head. I think I'm feeling upset, and share that. I think I better take a break and go take care of myself for a little bit, right? Now, this is one of the four, self-awareness is one of the four dimensions of emotional intelligence that we talked about in the emotions toolbox. Self-awareness, social awareness. Social awareness includes empathy, being able to see other people's point of view. Self-regulation, managing our impulses, regulating our emotions, being able to soothe and calm the world of anger, and be motivated toward personal goals. Keep on track toward those things that really matter to us. And there's going to be stuff in life that happens that pulls us off course. We're not, COVID happens, we have to go through a major adaptability process. We can't expect ourselves to perform at the highest level when we're in an adaptation process. If the ants hill gets knocked down and they have to rebuild an ant hill, then the ants can't be as productive as they were when they had an ant hill, because now they got to build an ant hill. So we have to be reasonable about how our expectations are. And then social regulation or management, you can use management for regulation if you want, but working well with others, being able to work as a team, being able to give and take, right? And being skilled at these is more correlated with all measures of life success, whether it's career, personal happiness, relationship happiness, than any other variable, than IQ, than grades, than money, than any variable. So that's really powerful information. And so the golden key is care for yourself like you really matter. This is so important. You want to be with yourself like you really matter. You want to treat yourself like you really matter, like you matter. And one great practice to help you with that is, what can I do to help myself feel better right now? So that you can learn to rely on yourself more instead of always looking for an external source. Now, what can I do to help myself feel better right now? Might be to go take a bath. I could really use with a cup of tea. I could, you know what I mean? It'd be nice. I think I should take a walk this afternoon, right? So this is really a mastery level of learning how to work with this system. Okay. And this question teaches you to tune in and start taking care of the system. Otherwise, we're going to project because everybody else isn't taking care of our system well enough. And so we get mad at everybody else. Meh, doesn't work. All right. So here's the empathy tool.
But we used our tools, especially the empathy.
Tell me about the empathy tool then.
How can I explain it? Empathy tool is when you care for others and you care for yourself. It can be just you, or it can be just your friends. It gotta be equal. You're caring about me, but also caring about yourself.
It's caring for others, trying to make sure everyone's, feeling, on the same level of everything. And then it's caring for yourself, really looking in the mirror and seeing that you're a good person inside. Empathy, I'd say if I see someone hurt, if it's my friend or not my friend, if I see someone not being very happy.
One time when this kid was feeling really sad for something, I asked him, do you want to play with us? And he felt much better. I feel really calm when I go inside my feelings and really understand how I'm feeling. I think that people were caring about empathy, and I also care about other people, and also care about myself, and that really, really helped. It's like you're having a best friend by your side.
There we go. Out of the mouths of babes. All right, everybody. Like having a best friend by your side. First best friend is you.